Let's get it started in Ukraine. We haven't talked about Ukraine in a while.
No, we have not. And this is the story that a lot of us have seen coming. So look at that fresh-faced, young, corrupt leader. This is before the war. Pandora Papers. Ukraine leader. See, nobody knew who Zelensky was back then. Ukraine leader seeks to justify offshore accounts. This article was back in 2021. Files obtained by the ICIJ claim Volodymyr Zelensky and his partners established a network of offshore companies in 2012. Now, you'll notice the source I used was Al Jazeera. Not that there's anything wrong with Al Jazeera, but whenever you're really trying to make this case that libs are going to be very resistant to, you want to steelman it by using, one of the things they really love, like the New York Times. So this was a very bad week for the libs, needless to say. But I couldn't really find American news that covered this. Not to say there was none, but it wasn't easy to find. And you might remember Cy Hirsch. This was back in 2023. Zelensky embezzled $400 million from U.S. taxpayer money. No mainstream press coverage. A lot of derisive coverage of it overseas. Oh, this is fake. Where's his proof? But boom, the gray lady finally caught up to Seymour Hersh a couple years later. Glenn Greenwald, in the least surprising revelation ever, the New York Times, which has vocally and vehemently championed Zelensky and U.S. financing of the war in Ukraine, documents how Zelensky and his top aides facilitated the stealing of billions in aid. Who could have seen that coming? Who could have seen that coming? There were no signs out there that something like this might be happening in the most corrupt country in Europe. Huh. Who knew? Who knew? All right, so this news report is pretty funny, not only in that the anchors are just absolutely shocked by what they're covering and clearly haven't figured out what they're supposed to do to manage the narrative here. And it's also kind of like the arrest scene in Goodfellas. It's, everybody getting dragged out of the warehouses with the hot merchandise being hauled off in handcuffs.
To bring you coming to us from out of Ukraine. Now, you will know that there has been a corruption scandal engulfing that man's administration, President Volodymyr Zelensky. In the last few minutes, officials have reported that the anti-corruption authorities, that is NABU, have carried out searches of President Zelensky's offices. That's according to officials there.
Well, yes, and as we're saying, Ukraine has been caught up in this damaging corruption scandal.
Whoever sold you that suit had a wonderful sense of humor.
Have been talking about how they believe that some of President Zelensky's close associates could be involved in some kind of plot. The thought is that perhaps money has been skimmed off Ukraine's energy sector. This scandal erupting, of course, while Ukrainians are suffering blackouts caused by Russian bombing. So that investigation is underway. So this latest development is that officials are now saying that those anti-corruption authorities are conducting searches of President Zelensky's chief of staff.
Yeah, it centres around that energy company, Energy-Atom, and the main focus of this is one of President Zelensky's key allies, a man called Timur Mindich, who is accused of being involved in this scandal. He has fled Ukraine. He fled a couple of weeks ago. The authorities there want to speak to him, of course. But as we see from this latest line of reporting, these searches now right at the heart of the Kyiv administration in Zelensky's office. This has now come very, very close to the president. We'll get more details, of course, on this throughout the day here on Sky News.
Hello, Bukele. Where do you get suit? I love suit. I love suit. I want suit like you suit. He's wonderful.
I have
Maybe
Oscar
President
from Sean
Trump,
Penn.
don't yell at me next time.
I have Oscar from Sean Penn. I traded to you for flat screen TV. I need one I can mount on the wall.
You have the bracket. The bracket
The
never
bracket?
put
I
on.
need the
It
bracket.
never put on.
I'll give you half the Oscar for bracket for flat screen TV.
Zelensky's government sabotaged oversight, allowing corruption to fester. This is the New York Times. This is not the Fuentes Dispatch here. This is the New York Times. Over the past 4 years, a New York Times investigation found the Ukrainian government systematically sabotaged that oversight, allowing graft to flourish. President Volodymyr Zelensky's administration has stacked boards with loyalists, left seats empty, or stalled them from being set up at all. Leaders in Kyiv even rewrote company charters to limit oversight, allowing hundreds of millions of dollars to be spent without outsiders poking around. Anti-corruption authorities have accused members of his inner circle of siphoning off and laundering 100 million from the state-owned nuclear power company Energoatom. Mr. Zelensky's administration has blamed Energoatom's supervisory board for failing to stop the corruption, but it was Mr. Zelensky's government itself that neutered Energoatom's supervisory board, the Times found. Political interference not only at Energoatom, but also at Ukrenergo and Ukraine's Defense Procurement Agency. Even as Ukraine undermined outside oversight, European money kept flowing. We do care about good governance, but we have to accept that risk, said Christian Seiss, the special envoy to Ukraine from Norway and one of Kyiv's top donors, because it's war. Oh, well, okay then. Contractors on Energoatom projects had to pay kickbacks of up to 15%. After Russia's 2022 invasion, Zelensky relaxed anti-corruption rules and worked with political and business figures whom he had once declared to be criminals. The Energoatom scandal weakened his case for Ukraine to join the European Union and NATO. There will be more hesitation to dedicate big funding, said Arvid Turkner, managing director for Ukraine at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and one of Kyiv's largest financial backers. In late 2021, Herman Halushenko, Zelensky's energy minister, wanted Mr. Kudryavtsy, the company's former chief executive, to hire people with limited experience in the energy business. I hear this guy, Hunter Biden, he ride train. He ride many train. He be very good in this business.
Yeah.
He started aggressively trying to make me appoint them, said Mr. Kudryavtsy. By late 2021, the Ukrainian government hijacked that board and established a playbook to use with other companies. Rather than pick exclusively from the EU shortlist, insisted that one of the seats go to Roman, I thought it said Roman Polanski, go to Roman Piatkowski, rated too low to make the shortlist. Under Mr. I hear we have much in common. We both like 13-year-old girls. Rated too low to make the shortlist. Under Mr. Kudryavtsy's leadership, Ukrenergo made repairs. Western donors gave it $1.7 billion. Yeah, man, you know, they can't afford healthcare for you, can't afford housing, can't afford free public universities. They can afford to send money to disappear into the black hole of notoriously corrupt Ukraine, whose leader had previously been investigated and named for having shady offshore accounts. One foreign member resigned, leaving an even split. Mr. Piatkowski voted to fire Kudryavtsy. The two other foreign board members resigned in protest, issuing a statement calling the dismissal politically motivated. Mr. Kudryavtsy said the energy ministry had wanted to make it easier for corruption to go unchecked. One of the men he had refused to hire is now under investigation in the Energoatom case. Mr. Halushenko recently resigned amid the investigation. Mr. Hulashenko pushed a major spending plan at Energoatom. He wanted to buy 2 old Russian-designed nuclear reactors from Bulgaria. Western donors and anti-corruption watchdogs immediately criticized the idea. Tim Stone had planned to order a review of what he called the Franken reactors. Quote, they understood that as soon as they start the activities of the supervisory board, they can lose control, said Oleksiy Movchan, a lawmaker from Zelensky's party who pushed the independent boards. While Energoatom's board remained inactive, a $100 million kickback scheme was underway. Dr. Stone walked away. The whole thing was just a complete rat's nest, he said. When Ukraine finalized the board, it kept Dr. Stone's seat empty. Energoatom was powerless to prevent corruption. 8 people, including Mr. Zelensky's former business partner, face embezzlement, money laundering, and illicit enrichment. The agency has spent at least $1 billion in European money with an incomplete supervisory board or without one at all. Marina Bezrukova said the absence of a board left her vulnerable to pressure. The defense ministry had pushed her to approve dubious contracts, including mortar shells that failed to fire. Your tax money, folks. There you go. On the eve of the first board meeting, the defense ministry rewrote the procurement body's charter. When a foreign expert resigned, the administration fired the 2 government members, leaving the board without a quorum. Supervisory boards are just window dressing, she said. They're not real. You notice how newspapers like the New York Times, like the Guardian, have been telling us, Washington Post, have been telling us for years how Zelensky has gotten the corruption under control with these supervisory boards. The Europeans are creating a permissive environment for this kind of backsliding, said Tyson Barker, a former State Department official overseeing Ukraine's economic recovery. The European Commission warned of persistent political interference. Mr. Zelensky has tried to distance himself. His prime minister denied any government interference. She blamed the board and she fired all its members. Cheese it, boys. The jig is up. You know, what's also interesting. The New York Times says they were researching this for 4 years. There was nothing that you found in that 4 years that could have been reported out. Like, you didn't have anything in that 4 years that passed enough of the fact checking that you could have warned the public that this was going on. This all just came together now. So you know what this looks like? This looks like the latest case of America throwing one of its puppets overboard. But that's not all. This very week, this is a very rough week for Volodymyr here. This is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. They just put out a press release on the U.S. International Court of Justice, the ICJ, their acceptance for hearing of the matter of Ukraine's responsibility for genocide and related crimes. Now, you know, they've been giving us the version of incubator babies in Ukraine is that the Russians are committing genocide there and kidnapping the Ukrainian children. But they made a counterclaim to the court that they only started this war because of genocidal actions on the part of Ukraine, which now the court has agreed to hear. The International Court of Justice has upheld the Russian Federation's position and accepted its counterclaims against Ukraine for hearing under the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. All objections raised by Kyiv regarding the alleged inadmissibility of Russia's counterclaims have been dismissed in their entirety. The Russian Federation submissions have been accepted by the court in full. The ICJ's ruling, rendered on December 5th, marks a logical development following Ukraine's futile attempts to hold Russia accountable for initiating the special military operation. Across Ukraine, a policy of forcibly erasing Russian ethnic identity has been implemented, banning the Russian language and culture, persecuting the Russian-speaking Orthodox Church, glorifying collaborators of the Third Reich, and obliterating the memory of the victory over Nazism. Moscow demanded that Kyiv answer for these atrocities, not only concerning state-sponsored genocide, but also complicity in genocide, incitement to genocide, and failure to take measures to prevent and punish genocide. By reaffirming the legal admissibility of Russia's claims, the ICJ has signaled its readiness to assess the full scope of crimes committed by the Kyiv regime and its accomplices. The West's hope of wielding legal weaponry against Russia have once again been dashed. This weapon is now turned against Kyiv's plaintiffs. A third of the states previously aligned with Ukraine have hastily withdrawn, recognizing the futility and even the risks of continued participation. Other Western nations should likewise cease shielding this criminal neo-Nazi regime and exerting pressure on the ICJ. So this is finally from Jim Ferguson, who puts all of this in context because, hey, all of this was evident before. All of this was quite evident before. Cy Hirsch reported this over 2 years ago, that this money was disappearing into a black hole. Why now? Why now? And why isn't the ICJ getting pressure now? Did you see all the usual lib suspects? Did you see multiple sclerosis now lose their mind about this ICJ ruling? No, they're not even talking about it. That's when they're throwing a puppet overboard. Volodymyr Zelensky, once the media's golden idol, the globalist perfect puppet, and the West's most useful asset, is now being sacrificed. Anti-corruption authorities just raided his own office in Kyiv. His closest allies are fleeing the country. Investigators say money was skimmed from Ukraine's energy sector, while ordinary Ukrainians sat in darkness during Russian strikes. This is no minor scandal. This is the net tightening. The global machine that installed him is now dismantling him because Zelensky has served his purpose. The war didn't go the way NATO promised. Western public support collapsed. The money laundering pipelines are being exposed. Europe is shifting to post-Zelensky planning. A desperate leader engulfed in scandal with billions unaccounted for and foreign intelligence services circling. This is how globalist assets end, not with applause, but with handcuffs, exile, or silence. And by silence, I assume he means silence. Termination with extreme prejudice. This little nugget, this classic from Henry Kissinger: America has no permanent friends or enemies, only interests. To be an enemy of America can be dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. Indeed. Indeed. They're done with him. They're done. There you go. There you go, Voldemir. Your money's on the dresser. Your money's on the dresser. They used him, and now he's a liability because he's a corrupt clown. He's a TV comedian. He thought he was some war leader walking around with these fucking black turtlenecks and the combat boots. He's a joke. He's a clown. He's a puppet. And now, yeah, they clearly, they're not going to defeat Russia, as anybody could have told them. The sanctions against Russia backfired. They're looking to turn down the temperature. This guy's got to go overboard. They need to blame somebody. They need a scapegoat for why could have won the war, but he's buying defective munitions with our tax money. We had the best of intentions. If this guy had not been so corrupt, we could have won this war. All right. And then they move in BlackRock and the rest of the goons to profit off of death and misery, as they always do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these realizations could have been made a few years ago. There was no reason
they knew
why they shouldn't have been. In fact, they were, just not by the people at the New York Times. Right.
Right.
The broadcast media has a little bit of an excuse for not covering this. It must be hard to find an anchor willing to pronounce the word energotom on TV, because if you trip over that word, it could be very dangerous. It's a very dangerous word for a dyslexic to read. Energotom. Even the other one, Ukrainergo. Yeah, you really want to be careful when you say that. Wolf Blitzer has to slow down.
I was feeling the pressure.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a balancing. It's a balancing act. One false slip of the tongue, and you're canceled.
This is why
forever.
we don't cover Ukraine.
Yeah, no, it's too risky.
Look, there's advice I would give to any country with names that are difficult to pronounce for English speakers. Change those names, you'll get more coverage.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's funny because we sometimes think to ourselves when we're going through stories to do, hey, we haven't done Ukraine in a while, and I know there's probably some audience members who wish we would cover it more. And I kind of feel weird about not covering it as much as we do because it's obviously very important. Like, this is obviously not a minor story. It's a pretty major story. But literally every story just produces the exact same take. Like, I feel like my opinion on this has not changed at all in, 3.5 years now? Like, I've been saying the exact same thing about this war since the day it began, literally, when we did an impromptu Facebook live stream, which is there's no way they could win. This is a ridiculous waste of blood and treasure, and the people of Ukraine are being sacrificed at the altar of NATO and the American empire. Like, I could say this in my sleep. Like, and nothing that has developed has even caused me to expand upon that or deviate from that in any way. So then once again, I'm a broken record. This is why we don't cover this more, because I assume it's boring to hear us say the same exact thing show after show after show every time this comes up. But if I knew how this was going to go as someone with very limited knowledge, almost zero knowledge, I'm a 9/11 kid. I'm not a Cold War kid. This is like not my bag here. If I knew how this was going to go on the day it started, you're telling me all these people didn't know how it was going to go? If it went according to plan. As you mentioned, the reason they took forever to validate these stories about all the money disappearing is because they wanted to destroy Ukraine so that American corporations can come in and rebuild it for profit.
When you deal with these libs, I mean, I know some libs who are in the news business. I won't say what outlets, but I know some libs like this. No, I mean, mostly they really believe what they're told. Like, the people at the media peddling this garbage, not all of them.
I'm talking about like Boris Johnson. I'm talking about the real actors. I'm not talking about the media.
Sure. But a lot of these day-to-day reporters, they're libs. That's why they have the job, because they don't have an original thought in their head. People who have, it's very hard year after year to pretend not to believe what you believe. So mostly the people who get promoted, who get a byline at the New York Times, they're true believers, man. You tell them Zelensky is defending the values of the West, and those values are great values, and Putin is evil, and they believe it. They just, and then you give them another order. Just like your lib aunt, who one day, multiple sclerosis now, tells her one thing, she believes it. They could tell her the opposite the next week. They're like that. The people who are literally running these news divisions are like that. Not all of them. Going to your point, the real higher ups who hire them, they're the ones who know better. But they specifically hire the kinds of morons who are going to repeat the propaganda they want put out there.
Sure thing.
Please clap.